1. The hallway and Manginas in bespoke suits. It was supposed to start with running, I know, but it starts with the hallway. Always the hallway. It was a walk of dread down the passageway of transformation, whereby I'd give myself over to the even poorer soul playing me at work. The hallway led to the very quick of the nightmare, in the crucible where all values are reduced to slag, as Mr. Henry Miller wrote in The Air-Conditioned Nightmare. He was referring to Pittsburgh, and I was in Big Ball Investment Corporation, or BBIC, but BIC. What was my job? I was a freelance communications guru, overpaid and underutilized, and for the first couple of years, with a bank account that grew fat for the first time in my life, I was pleasantly numb sitting in my private office and crafting texts that no one cared about, or rather, there was no appreciation of the subtleties. The thickness of the wallet was relative, of course, but after so many years of counting each and every euro and incessantly calculating my budget by the day, week, and month, my bank account sure felt fat. All those desperate hunts for euro notes and cents and coat and pant pockets that only yielded scraps of paper and receipts, and digging between sofa cushions for change. And the guru bit about my job is puffery, lame, cowboy bull crud. But that puff chest was under a shirt and suit made for me by Jack, an elderly Greek man with a small second-floor shop in the Bahnhofsviertel. Jack had toothbrush bristles over his lip, and his teeth on the right side were worn down from chomping on cigars. Does tobacco leaf erode teeth? I suppose it does. One morning I was walking down the hallway with my headphones on, and Wim Mertens' Iris was playing. The song fit the moment perfectly, with the piano and the voice both lamenting my arrival and my transformation to business person. I knew that I needed to change, but didn't know what to do. I felt trapped like most of the others in the building. It was a great job money-wise, but it was inhuman and cold and without a meter of poetry. I didn't want to turn into that guy who complains about his job and does nothing to change his situation and resigns himself to live a life of quiet desperation as he waits for retirement. That morning was about 2 years ago. I was miserable and had even started to develop a middle-aged belly from the canteen food I ate 3 days a week. It must have been fall, the gray days growing shorter, and I had run into gentlemen reading an e-book in the lounge area up on the 7th floor. We both worked on the 2nd floor. I was probably up there scouting a place to shoot a video. "What's up, shithead?" said gentleman in greeting. "Not much, Dick," I answered. "How you doing?" He said he was tired. He was always tired. He is always tired. He asked if I wanted to come along with him to the pub after work. I had always declined his invitation to the pub. Irish pubs had never done it for me. I was more of a cocktail guy. Gentleman assured me that I'd enjoy his living room away from home. After work, I took a taxi to the pub. It was only a 15-minute walk, but I preferred taxis over the carriage of my feet back then. I pulled open the door of the pub, and alternative rock from the 90s and the buzzing of many voices greeted me. Gentleman was standing at the far end of the bar across from a man with a shock of white hair. Gentleman introduced me to the man with the white hair, Pete, who was hunched over the other side of the bar, hands framing a beer as his arms rested on the worn wood, looking as if he owned the place. He was the owner. "Are you another cock-sucking banker?" Pete asked me, laughing or growling. "It's okay if you are. Gentleman told me you work with him at BBIC, but he said you're in PR, which is even worse than being a banker. Biggest scum on earth." "Nice to meet you as well, Pete," I said. "And your president is a twat, but not as big a twat as Obama was," said Pete. "A Kiwi barman calling himself Timmy, a silly name for a grown man, asked me what I was drinking. I told him I'd have whatever gentleman had. Ooh, I suppose you let gentlemen lead when you're dancing really close, too, huh? Pete, there is a wan graciousness to your establishment, I said, giving Pete a wink. Pete half smiled and nodded out a huh before chuckling to himself. It was the word wan, I bet. That was my introduction to the pub. Peg-leg Pete hasn't changed a bit, that ornery bastard with a kind heart buried somewhere inside him, maybe in his liver. And Timmy is still always cocked and ready to shoot homosexual innuendos, or something about sheep. What was remarkable about that night, besides it being the first time I visited the pub, was what happened when I stepped outside with gentlemen to have a smoke. I wasn't a smoker. Am still not a smoker. But yes, now and again, I do enjoy having a smoke with my drink. And I must have been on my third Jaeger at that point. I wasn't drunk, but I could feel my superpowers growing. Gentlemen and I were probably discussing the OED's word of the day, or how knowledge differs from wisdom, or the origin of a phrase, or he was telling me about the book he was reading. Gentleman is a word man. No matter what we were discussing, he was tired. He is always tired, of course. 3 kids at home, a dog that he must always take out for a walk, and he never gets enough sleep. He sucked down his cigarette before I was halfway through mine. I told him to go inside. He looked cold and tired. We had been smoking right outside the door at a stay-tish, a table you stand at. And as gentlemen went back inside, I remember taking a deep drag and turning to the patio area. A man was sitting by himself at one of the long tables. He was looking at me. We raised our glasses at the same time. He was wearing a gray, puffy-down jacket and had a red beanie on his head. He smiled at me as if we knew one another. His left upper incisor had a big chip in it, and his nose was leaning over slightly to the right. A shovel to the face? He had one of those faces that looked like someone had applied skin-color paint directly to the facial skeleton, with protruding cheekbones and a jawline sharp enough to dice a tomato. He also had jaw muscles like baseball great Brett Butler. He looked like a tough guy, but I had burgeoning superpowers, and am usually friendly. So I went over and shook his hand, introducing myself. And he said,
Stanley, Manginas in bespoke suits, with their fancy Italian shoes and €100 haircuts. They're pretend alphas. I had fun destroying a few of those big corporate dicks in the St. Louis Fight Club, and they even stopped being Manginas after a few beatings.
What the hell was he talking about? Was he calling me a mangina because of my suit? My shoes were from London. I had never heard the term mangina before, but I figured it out. In the Fight Club? Like in the book? Why did I always have to meet these kind of people?
Sure, they're everywhere. There's even one here in Frankfurt. Haven't you been?
I thought the first rule of Fight Club was you do not talk about Fight Club.
Ah, who cares? Nobody believes anything anymore, Stanley. I was just making that up. By the way, we met a long time ago, but I don't think you remember me. I'm Mr. Sparrow. I've got your plan B. Are you ready?